The Soweto uprising in 1976, when youths protesting against the use of Afrikaans in schools clashed with police and sparked off a nationwide revolution. Within months, the landscape of South Africa had changed and the process of achieving democracy had moved to another level. At that time, Nelson Mandela had been on Robben Island for well over a decade. His fellow prisoners, all generally of the same generation, Sas Cooper arrived on the island in 1977, one of a group of student leaders who'd been sentenced to prison.
First time we saw Mandela on the island was in the reception area, and it was my co-accused and I, and we saw this tall figure walking along in a fairly stately manner, and a couple of us said, "That's Mandela," and others said, "No, it can't be, because he's not that old. He can't be that old." I think there was a sense of disbelief, a sense of confusion about what we represented, because it was unusual for leadership to be in the hands of people in their early 20s. And he could not really accept that the events that were unfurling in the country were as a result of youthful protest, youthful organization.
And yet, says Cooper, Mandela would listen.
You could sense the resistance, but would listen anyway. He was a very good listener and would try to insinuate his viewpoint through a carefully considered question of clarification or positing another position, but listened. May not have liked what he was hearing, but listened nevertheless.
Cooper was a leader of the Azanian People's Organization, a political movement rooted in black consciousness and vigorously opposed to the African National Congress and its non-racial philosophy. So too was Mosiuoa Lekota, another of the young student leaders who met Nelson Mandela on Robben Island. But in long talks with Mandela and others, he was persuaded to shift his political position and come to a new realization.
The struggle in this country was more complex than just the question of black versus white. And as I came to understand that, I realized that now the correct approach was to fight the struggle on a non-racial basis. Young men and women fall in love and marry each other.
In subsequent years, Lekota became a central figure in the fight for a non-racial South Africa and rose through the ANC ranks to become the movement's chairman. But that all ended at a watershed ANC conference in 2007, when Lekota was booed by rowdy delegates who he'd accused of acting unconstitutionally. It was, he believes, proof that people, unlike Mandela, were not prepared to hear any view but their own. It was a time, he says, at which the legacy of Nelson Mandela was betrayed.
This is not the South Africa for which we understood we were struggling over the years of struggle, and which we learned about from Nelson Mandela and other leaders of our movement.
The ingrained culture of disrespect is so massive that we disrespect ourselves, we disrespect the institutions that we purport to uphold, particularly the Constitution, and our leadership.
And I do think that he would most certainly feel betrayed by those of us who feel that something is not right if we did not raise our voices to say, this is not right, we don't agree with it, we don't associate ourselves with it. I think he would feel that he had not done his duty well.
And while some argue South Africa today may not be what Nelson Mandela had hoped for on the day of his inauguration, those who once were in prison with him say his legacy of honesty and, above all, the ability to listen to the views of others remains undiminished. Hanna, Al Jazeera.